welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is on Discovery Blueprints, talking to the outcomes. I have the pleasure of introducing one of our new product managers, Matt Lammy. And before we get him to do his introduction, just a couple of reminders. Please, as this is going to be a live demo and also some talk tracks, if you can use the Q&A section of Zoom for any questions you may have during the webinar, and then we will open up to live Q&A at the end. We do want this to be as interactive as possible, so do put those questions in and then we'll discuss everything at the end. So I'm now going to hand over to Matt to do his introduction and get started. And I think we're roughly going to use the full hour. We may go slightly over for those that want to stay for the Q&A. So Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining today. I just thought I'd do a quick introduction. I'm Matt Lamby. I'm a lead product manager for Discovery here at BMC. Some of you, I see some familiar names on here. You may know that I've worked with Discovery for a few years now, so hopefully on a page with everyone. I thought today we just might have a bit of a conversation around blueprints and how we can use blueprints for different outcomes. So we've got the AI ops outcome, we've got the ITSM outcomes, and how they don't need to be exclusive of each other. So with that, if you don't mind, I'm going to take myself off camera and we'll drop over to some slides and just have a bit of a talk through, bit of a demo, jump into Discovery, run around a little bit to see how we may consume the capability, and hopefully see what you guys have got to feedback and the experiences you've had with the tools. So, camera. Marvelous. So, yeah. So, hello there. Hopefully, talking not as technical, more from a what are the outcomes we're looking for? How are we looking to look at the data? And who are our consumers of our data from Discovery? So today we're going to be a bit of an agenda, quite simple. Who are our consumers? What content might we want in our models? Who wants to see what level of detail in a model? And then just a bit more of an open forum, but some observations, some experiences. I've got a few. Hopefully you guys have got some to offer as well, to see how we may all make the best out of blueprinting. So if we start with perspective, who's looking at the data, and from what height are we looking at the data? So when we think of our internal users, they're going to be wanting to know, is a service available? A holiday booking service, a payroll service. They have a very top level view. They only really want to know, is it red, is it green, is it available, is it broken? Do IT know that it's broken and they're already working on it? From service management perspective, we maybe are thinking more around change management, impact management, risk to service if something is changed or planned for change in the future. And so for those people, we'd probably be looking at the application and the parent business service impact that may be affected should any change occur in the application. And then from service ops, we've got the more focused view on the underlying spider web, as I like to call it, of connectivity, of component parts, servers, software, resources. Are they working? What impact may they have? Where do I need to go to fix something? A bit of a repeat here on the previous slide with the content. Users are not interested in the detail. They just want to know, is it available? Is it working? Is it broken? When's it going to be fixed? Service management, they like to know the spider web. They need to know, if I take out one server here to replace it, what impact on what services may occur? If we have multiple pieces of software running, are they load balanced? If we take one out, is it going to potentially impact something? If we upgrade some software, what software is delivering what service? Service ops, much more around the observability, where we are right now. So who do I wake up at 2 in the morning? Where do I send them to go and fix something? What do we need to employ, maybe with automation, to fix what, where right now? And then a couple of talking points, things that I would suggest we look at or consider when we're doing our modeling. Mappings in the CNDB. So as most of you will be aware, there's an awful lot of data in Discovery, including deep dive detailed nodes that are not natively mapped to the CNDB because they're not of interest in the CNDB. It's an awful lot of data from very limited outcomes. Things like detail nodes, candidate software instance nodes, and they can cause an area of conversation in themselves. When we include them in a model, they may not appear in the CNDB, and we can talk through that as we're looking at an example. Hiding content. So if you create a blueprint and it looks beautiful, it has everything that we want in there, but right in the middle of the service that it's going to build is an awful lot of records, hundreds, thousands of records, which makes our models very, very busy. And we decide, you can hide the content and keep the relationship in the model. By hiding content, when you create the services, you can have separation of your component parts without being able to look at the dependencies when you're talking to observability and monitoring in AI ops, and also with ITSM, where you don't know the ongoing impact of one piece to another. So it's worth considering the weight of your service, the size of your service versus the accessibility of understanding impact or dependency. One a bit more around the function and in OR. I caught myself struggling a little bit to go, I need that to be an OR. So where type is this or this, and it was just one that I wanted to bring up in a demo. And so we can have a look at that as we go through. And shape versus content. This is one that goes back to that thousands of component parts, which makes a very large model, and how it would be unwieldy to try and manually add or know what those parts may be. When we talk about ephemeral nodes, such as containers or transient node types, like a software pod in Kubernetes, apologies. If we try to lock in and make sure that we know those nodes and those specific UIDs every single day, we will find ourselves chasing our tail. And so if we can move to more of a shape of our model, when we look at it in whichever visualizers we use, if we look to ensure the shape of that visual looks consistent day to day, we stop panicking so much when we maybe have 1,000 software component parts or 1,000 pods in our model today, and we come back tomorrow and it's a completely different 1,000 pods, but it's still 1,000. And so when we're looking at it from a visualization perspective, we can be confident and trust the system in the rules that we've built into our blueprint are putting the right data into the right places in the models. And there was one other thing that came out recently in version 24.1, which is business service sync. And I gave this one its own slide because I quite like it. I think it's a fantastic opportunity that we now have. You may well have existing business services in your CNDB, or you may want to create the top level business services in your CNDB, but you want Discovery to manage the content. So you can create business application instances in Discovery. They naturally sync over to the CNDB. When they go through to assets, you can then consume those BMC applications, CIs, and relate those to manual or existing services. This new component part of the CNDB sync will actually go to asset on a schedule, and I just set 8 hours there but it's accessible. it will look at asset, look for all business services that have a related BMC application that came from discovery, and it will bring those business service nodes back into discovery with the relationships to the lower level applications, BAIs that came from discovery. And so you can create this circle of data. Again, you can create your own services, you can receive the applications and then create the business service nodes, CIs, or existing, relate the BAIs that we've pushed over and relate those to your existing services, and they will come back to discovery to allow consumption, ideally within the entire tool sets. So ITOM, ITSM, that data will then have a nice loop, so you can enrich with more applications, and it will keep going over to discovery, over to the CNDB, where reconciliation will ensure that those same business services we won't duplicate. We're actually mapping onto the existing business services in the asset data sets. And that's about it for the talking. I thought we may go straight to discovery and actually do some running around. Now, I wanted to do a quick call out. There's a lot of content in the appliance that we're going to use today that are custom patterns. There's a lot of relationships that we have developed just for the sake of a demo. So the blueprint that you see on screen at the moment is going to be of BNC Discovery itself. And BNC Discovery does not have a relationship to Kubernetes as the center deployment or to cloud services as per the top branch. But it was to offer a train of thought that to get you guys asking questions of how may we approach our services? What content, what potential futures might we want to have if we have an on-premise deployment at the moment and we're moving to a containerized or a cloud environment? Can we build a blueprint that would cover both at the same time, and as pieces move from on-premise to cloud, the same blueprint will consume the data and deliver on our service? So if I switch over to discovery now, hopefully I have a discovery instance running. Marvelous. So BNC Discovery, we're going to jump into two areas. One is layering up of our services once we have them created. And we're going to start with looking at the blueprinting itself. And so if I jump into blueprinting, are we all okay to see this? I'll take silence as a yes.
We can see it okay, Matt.
Marvelous, thank you. So I'm not looking at this as a training session today. So if anyone does have any questions on seeing me jump around screens, hopefully they're familiar to everyone. If they're not, I'm sure Sam can help you look at the education services or the documentation or the communities themselves. And I'm a big advocate for engagement through the communities. Some of you may have seen my name over the years popping up in various places. So if there's any parts that as we go through today, please feel free to drop a note on the communities. It's usually been quite vibrant. We're all quite active on there. So there's usually a good amount of support for curveball questions, training, learning, all of that. Communities is the place to go. So in here, we have a few blueprints. I've disabled the out-of-the-box ones, but for one, this default from Kubernetes, and the other four are created by myself just for the sake of demonstration. The reason for this is to just show how we can interchange between out-the-box, blueprints relevant to your specific circumstances, layering up, but it was to try and cut down on the noise a little bit. But obviously there are 25 other blueprints in here at the moment. And if I just give a quick run through, we've got BMC. That's the discovery application. We're going to use the Kubernetes to pull in the infrastructure of the Kubernetes cluster itself, the nodes, the cluster and the servers and the worker nodes, all the nodes. We're going to include Active Directory, so domain services for LDAP dependencies. clusters, we're going to include the Kubernetes clusters, the vCenter cluster. We're going to then also include single sign-on. And in this case, it's Helix single sign-on. So we're coming off an on-premise Helix instance. So when we're looking through and we've got lots of deployments and load balanced components, that's all coming from a Kubernetes component. And we'll be looking to create layers. So at the very top, we're going to create a few services, technical services, business services. We're going to then have lots of applications layered up below that with dependency relationships from top to bottom. So if I jump into the BMC blueprint, that's the one that we're going to use for talking points. And if we go in here, this gives us the opportunity to observe a few things. And so starting with our starter, I have two filters on that. We've got select application, it's just looking at type, it's got a regex on BMC, so it will pull up all BMC type software. We then, there is no and not in the visualizer at the moment, so just specifying an attribute that we know has to have content is just the second filter there. What that's going to do is just present me with a single instance of BMC discovery. Closing that. Then we've got our outpost, and we've also got our Apache server. So this is filtered on BMC again. This is filtered on Apache. So the idea here is that we want the appliance, we want the outposts, and we want the Apache server that the outposts are talking to. If we were doing a different perspective, we may say that we want the Apache instance that is related to the appliance. In this instance, I wanted communication just to demonstrate that you can look at different connectivity between and relationships between the node types. This is a fairly traditional on-premise deployment, appliance, outpost, and Apache. First talking point of interest for me is candidate software. Now, some of you may have noticed there is a candidate software instance called TWSSH Worker, quite common to see. If we deploy this service and we build a service that includes those two candidate software instances, they will not go to the CMDB. And that will mean that you have a difference in your imagery between the two services. And so it is a good thing to consider that if you want to include a candidate software, brilliant for AIOps, it's just a process, it will monitor it, brilliant, fantastic. If you want to see that data in your CMDB, you need to go through the candidate software process of selecting them, create pattern, click go, let it create the software instance, and then you can include them as a normal software instance. They will go through standard out-the-box CMDB sync to the CMDB, everything will look amazing. Or you can request for enhancement if you believe those processes are a component part of an existing piece of software. Raise a ticket, get those processes added. Citrix was one when they changed versions. They included an awful lot of new processes, and they weren't in the pattern on day one. So that I saw them being included in subsequent months. Another talking point. Runtimes. So yes, there is an instance of Java running. Yes, you could monitor it, but this may be more applicable for something like service management, where I think that instance is Oracle Java 1.8 or something at the moment. If someone raises a change to upgrade whatever that is, and you've included it in your service, you will know that there is a potential impact should anything not go as expected, as planned. So it's an opportunity to consider the content again of, do I need it for AIOps? Not really. Do I really need it for anything other than software versioning and change management? Yes, it could hold value. So that's the more traditional end of the model. And you may have noticed that I've got multiple things relating into host. On the slide, I actually had other pieces up here relating to another instance of a host, and something to consider is that you may sometimes do this. You may sometimes say, oh, that cloud service, for instance, is running on a server. And you may think, oh, brilliant, that should work. And you look at the content and it's not there. One thing to always try first is to add multiple versions of this, multiple instances of the same thing. And apologies. So you could try that, preview the content, and it may well be there. In practice, there are no cloud services related to hosts. It was to demonstrate the answer. So it's always worth trying this first, one-to-one, and then if that works, maybe then try and see if that works again. Depending on how how complex your blueprint may be. In practice, I don't want it, so I'm going to leave it as it was. So the on-premise stuff, there's some considerations. When we start to look at containerization and cloud and potential migration, you may be taking an on-premise deployment of your software, you may be migrating to containers or to cloud, but you'd like a blueprint that could reflect whatever type of deployment you have. Maybe it's a hybrid as you transition, maybe it's moving from one to the other and you want to see all parts during the transition. With a blueprint approach like this, you can say, well, if I have on-premise, brilliant. If I have on-premise and containers, or if I had containers and cloud, any parts that Discovery sees and builds these relationships will be included in your service. As you might move through, you may decide in the future, right, we're fully over to containers and to cloud. I don't want to see this bit, or I don't want to see the servers anymore. There are no servers. So if you come back into your blueprint and you delete something and save that, which I'm not going to do, if I save it, that will update and effectively retrofit all existing services. So it will go back through all the deployed services that are using this blueprint, and it will remove the component parts. And equally, if you add components to a blueprint, it will add them to all consuming services. So if you have 2 blueprints for 1,000 services, if you modify one blueprint and add some parts, that will update with whichever of those 1,000 services are consuming that blueprint. And as an example, that is an example I saw where we were able to create 2 blueprints for 1,000 services, and they were able to radically reduce their overhead on modeling. So if I close this and then go back into it so that we have a fresh view of what was there before. This time I'm going to click next. I'm going to say using the filters, the starter filters. This is offering me 1 instance of BMC Discovery. Now, there's actually 3 software instances of BMC Discovery in this instance of Discovery. So that /s regex has allowed me to filter those 2 out. And you can see the visualization looks very different to the more traditional spiderweb visualizer that's in Discovery. When we deploy a service using a blueprint, you can see it from that more traditional visualization. This is more of a left to right square block dependency visualizer. And depending on your appetite, you may prefer one over the other. I actually quite like both. So we started with a software instance, and it's actually put them right in the middle. It's that one there. Because of the direction of relationship are not really of any concern to the blueprint. So if I say I want a software instance related to a runtime environment and the dependency is actually the other way around, it doesn't matter. It just presents it in the from left to right in the direction that it sees the dependency relationships. So when you're looking at your blueprint, you don't really need to mind which way round is the SI going to the runtime, or is the runtime going to the SI? Doesn't matter. You start somewhere and you just say there is something connected somehow, related somehow to a runtime, and it doesn't matter which way round. When you present the data, it's actually the runtime is underpinning the software instance. If I bring this back down again, to just reiterate, these 2 things here, they will not go to the CMDB. They will go into AI Ops, absolutely fantastic. They have underlying processes, they can be monitored, they can be evented, they can be impacted, impactful. They will not have a CI in the CMDB at this stage. So my strong suggestion is to focus on candidates off, for instance, lists, identify the things that are important to you as a business, and try to work through all of those candidates, and then revise your blueprint. Because of the way on-premise Helix works, Helix on-premise is containerized in Kubernetes using a deployment, but the appliance can be on the outside. It can be a traditional appliance, and it talks through some software pods to discovery, and that's the relationship here. That's custom patterns, but it's the graphing containers connect via API into discovery. So that's where this is a non-out-of-the-box pattern. That deployment is related to some load balance services. That load balance service is equally related to a cloud service. Now, in this instance, again, that's all custom code. It's not out-of-the-box patterns. It's to be able to exhibit different scenarios, different data. This is all verging on the transitional deployment of discovery. If I was looking at this to say, oh, you've got some on-premise talking to some Kubernetes, which talks to some cloud, but you've got the traditional on-premise as well. So it's just a way of presenting the data in different ways. So if I close this, we're going to jump across to the services. Now, we've actually created services for these already using the discovery, the Kubernetes, the Active Directory domain services for LDAP relation dependencies, the infrastructure for VMware and the Plus and the Kubernetes, and for single sign-on as a bit of a linchpin to everything as a part of a dependency. If we go into our services, we've got one business services. I've called it payroll. It's to offer a different perspective on business versus technical, and the layering up of applications into services. So if I jump into this business service, we're going to see one green thing with lots of other stuff on the page. But actually, the top of the tree is this demo payroll. That's the one we've gone into, the service that we're looking at. And that demo payroll has a dependency on single sign-on. A user phoning up, only wanting to know or report it's not working, may have a screen of business services that are just red and green. They don't need to know all of these lower level dependencies. They don't need to know that if single sign-on breaks, it also affects discovery, or it also affects holiday booking. It's to allow them to know at a top level from a business perspective, business services, payroll, holiday booking, and such like, so their services as they know them are affected. They're a logical representation. But we, behind the scenes, we then know, well, that service is dependent on this, which is dependent on that, which is dependent on that. And we can then, from a more technical perspective, we can then start to go, well, our help desk are taking calls about payroll. We can see that it's red. Single sign-on says that it's yellow or orange, it's impacted, but we know that single sign-on's working, so that can't be the issue. Maybe it's the underlying Helix namespace that is deployed into Kubernetes, or the Helix namespace says it's okay, but Kubernetes says that one of the nodes is broken. Right, so maybe we just have a performance issue that is affecting everything right up to payroll. If we then come back up to the top, down from payroll, let's assume that single sign-on has gone red, and I'm going to use very binary red and green rather than impacting. But single sign-on says it's down. Oh, brilliant. Well, our user base is reporting that payroll is down, but maybe we'll tell the discovery team that their stuff will be affected as well, because we also know that another consumer of the single sign-on that instance of single sign-on is BMC Discovery. And maybe we'll just go straight to the overarching application support team or operational team to let them know that one of their services is impacted. That application services team are also supporting the Helix namespace, the Helix deployment itself. So if there are any impacts to within the cluster namespace or to the specific pods and deployments for single sign-on, we can go straight to these guys. Any of those, we know who to go and wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning. We can take a call from the users complaining about payroll being down. We've identified that single sign-on is the cause. We're going to notify the owners, and that may be the application services team. What we have here is a business service and a technical service. Now, if you look in the CMDB, they're the same CI type, but they are conceptually different. One is more of a technical detail focus. One is more of a, how do we know this thing? You may look here and go, where's all the content? And this is a very good entry point to represent how the people that are viewing from this level don't really care what the content is. They don't care that there are 50 pods or 2 worker nodes or whatever behind it, or they just want to know what the status of this, and as they sit, and they might like to know that it's based on lots of things. If we dig down a bit and we go into one of the dependencies of demo payroll, we're going to go into a business application, and this is where we'll see more data. So we have demo payroll on the right, dependent on single sign-on, the one that we've gone into. And to the left, we start to see the makeup of single sign-on. We can see that there are some load balance services, that we can see there's the Kubernetes namespace, the Kubernetes deployment specific to RSSO, and then right the way through to the cluster and the physical worker nodes as well. So from an AI ops and observability, something goes wrong on one of these worker nodes, or maybe there's a 50% outage on the worker nodes, which impacts the cluster, which then degrades all the performance, or one of the deployments decides to die, that would then feed up and represent single sign-on is affected, therefore payroll is affected, therefore discovery is affected, therefore most of our users can't log in and do their day job on most of our applications. And if we just dig down through some of the other services, so this is the architecture here. We then have this second layer of architecture, which are the dependencies. So we've got the domain services, things like LDAP. Single sign-on in this demonstration is dependent on LDAP for authentication. We've got the Helix platform, which is the slice of the Kubernetes cluster. It's the namespace in its entirety. We then have the Kubernetes cluster itself. My domain services are running on vCenter, so we have another model here. And if we just start to dig into a few of these, we're going from right, moving back to the left here on the hierarchy of services. This is an application. It's got a domain controller or two, and this is because you have the primary, secondary, so they're in a client-server relationship rather than a peer relationship, hence the left and right rather than both being in the top level. They have services that are running, they've got DNS, they've got certificate services, DHCP, all of those things that are required for LDAP services to be available. They're all grouped in there. We could filter it. In the blueprint, you may say, well, I don't care about DHCP as far as LDAP. I don't want that included, or I want a different service, or I want a different application. It depends on your approach on how you view your services. And that's what the overarching theme is here, is to present a perspective and raise some observations, hopefully, amongst you all. So I'm not going to bother going down to the Kubernetes clusters and the VMware clusters. I think I'm hoping that the point is demonstrated here. And I'm going to stop the demo there. Some of you may know that I could talk about this all day, and I'm very guilty of using every moment of the call. But I wanted to take the opportunity to ask you all for your experiences with it, to see how you are using services, to a bit of a call to action to see how you are building your services and what opportunities Blueprints have been able to assist you with, or obviously to where we may look to improve Blueprints in the future. So with that note, I'm going to hand over to Sam and say thank you all for today. I look forward to talking and engaging with you all, and I am quite active on the communities. So if there are any fallout questions from today, please post them on the communities. I would love to engage and see how we can help each other to make the best out of Blueprints.
Thanks, Matt. So I think actually that's a really good segue. I don't know if you can pull up communities. I know we were talking about it before this session, just so we can give the customers and partners a bit of a walkthrough.
It's almost like I prepared it.
You did. So for those that aren't aware, and again, if you're already signed up for BMC support or you've got an account, you should be able to get access to communities. If you don't, or you're not sure how to use it, I'm more than happy for you to reach out. I'm happy to do some one-to-one or customer sessions. So as a recap, you've got the product overview, which is at the top in the white banner. When you click down and you select the option for discovery, it will take you to this page. As you can see, we have a lot of followers, a lot of posts that go in there. Matt is a great addition to our team, and obviously from his partner experience as well, he wants to make this community more active. A lot of the things that get put on at the moment are discussions, blogs. I put all of the events that are product specific into the product page, but we also have an event page at the top so you can see what's coming up, and including my community's webinar page. So after today's event, we will be putting a blog post which will list all the questions that have come into the Q&A. There's also the ideas and various different things you can do on here. So Matt's asked to me, because we're going to be working closely together and also collaborating with the AI Ops webinar series that we run. You'll see a lot more content coming out. We don't want to just assume what we're telling you is what you want to hear. So back to his first point of, please provide us some feedback. Let us know what you feel is missing. We could probably spend a whole session and a series on Blueprints. I know that would make Matt very excited, but we do ask you to let us know what you'd like to hear. There will be a survey at the end when we send that out. If it's not today, it will be tomorrow. If you want to just spend 5 minutes to fill it in. And again, use this forum now with this live discussion we're going to go to very shortly as also some feedback. So just a quick recap on here. You have the ideas, which is where the RFEs, we call them requests for enhancements, but they are ideas. That is a great opportunity to collaborate with the product managers. So there is Matt, there's Matt's manager as well. And we also have Brian that's in the US. Shafi is his director. They work together. You can see that the ideas portal will be there. We are due to launch a new program, so look out for that. And I will definitely be sharing that with everyone. But there are, as I said, the blogs, the documentation is linked to BMC Docs. So many useful things to use for the community. And I'm really excited that we have one of quite a few product managers that love using this forum. So if you're really into using social platforms, this would be a great opportunity to put some information in here, and we'll get back to you. So Matt, I think that's more than enough to talk on this particular page. I do want to give those 20 minutes or so to our customers. Don't think this is the only webinar we're going to be running. There is going to be a lot more. This is just the warm up to talk about Blueprints because it's a massive topic for our customers and partners. So I'm going to just, before we go to the Q&A, I see, Jan, you have your hand raised. If you want to come off mute, and I'm going to also unmute everybody else so they can speak to us, and then Matt will go through the questions. So Jan, straight away over to you if you want to just ask your question. You raised your hand. Can you hear us? You are unmuted, Jan. I don't know, Jan, if you're having any problems unmuting. Maybe we'll come back in a second, or can you hear us now? You there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yep. Hello. There was a bit of background noise and a different name, so you threw me there. So you had a question?
Yes, right. So my question is moreover like I saw that blueprint. It's really nice, and the question is moreover related to that. We understand that this blueprint model will drive us in more detailed view what we would like to see. Whereas we know that we can create a business service model that will get synced with our CMDB, the option, the very second slide which you have shown. So how does the monitoring can be enabled for such blueprint model, or do we have any possibilities which we are looking in that direction?
Love this question. It's also come up a few times on the. It's answering, I think, two, maybe three other questions on the Q&A. So thank you, Jan. It's the instance I have in front of us only has VNC Discovery. It doesn't have any of the other Heatlix apps deployed. So the AI Ops, all the other tools that are there, and I would strongly suggest that you try and get your account managers to walk you through. But ultimately, Discovery is now the center of the whole AI Ops journey. So when you create a blueprint in another tool called Service Monitor, it is actually engaging via APIs to the Discovery Graph database. When you create a service in Discovery, it's available to all the other tools immediately because they are all consuming a shared data lake. So when I created those services, if I had the AI Ops deployed, they would immediately see them. In the time it would take me to switch browsers is probably the time it would take to go, oh, okay, yeah, I see it. I'll refresh myself. So by creating the services in Discovery, they are immediately available to BHCO. There are considerations. BHOM, it actually consumes from the data lake via, BHOM actually sends events into Service Monitor, and Service Monitor is mapping those events onto the models. And so they all work together. The whole AI Ops experience is a lot more cohesive. It's a single view of your data. And BHOM is so I call it the Christmas tree, and some people may smile if they hear me say that, and they may, and yes, I am doing the jazz hands. You draw your Christmas tree with Discovery to create your layers and your architecture, and then BHOM comes along and puts all the fairy lights onto your Christmas tree. Those colored lights, the reds, the greens, the yellows, that's the BHOM piece onto the Christmas tree that is drawn out by Discovery.
Right.
So it's a single view on the data. When you talk to BHCO, that has a slightly different data model, but ultimately those services do still appear in BHCO. It's just considerations more around your relationships from servers, hosts, network devices directly into the services. So there are considerations of perspective, but it is ultimately the same data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's still I didn't get the clarity that it will not come out of the box. You mentioned about that we have to go with the separate database via the API calls. But if we create, so for example, the one which you have created as a Christmas tree, and that will not sync with our CMDB. It will stay in our Discovery itself repository.
Right,
Isn't
so
it?
out to the CMDB rather than BHOM. Okay, so services, business services, technical services, business application instances, they are all out of the box to synchronize to the CMDB. So even before this new CMDB business service sync, which is actually returning data to Discovery, we have always pushed the data so that all of that data is pushed to the import data set in the CMDB, and then it is reconciled into assets. So that should be happening the minute you create a service model of any type in Discovery. It will push via the CMDB sync. So that is effectively a copy of the data is pushed into the import data sets. For the AI Ops technologies, they're all using the single view of the data. They're actually going to the Discovery, the underlying graph databases to consume. So they are consuming the same data from the same place that Discovery is looking at it. When you look at the CMDB, it's synchronizing the changes over API.
So does that
those
mean
models will all be in the CMDB under, if you're using out of the box. So if you have modified your reconciliation rules in any way to maybe limit certain classes, those relationships, those maybe whole upper level classes, they may not go through. And if you have customizations in reconciliation, it's always worth checking that everything that you expect is in the import data set and going up to asset.
So does that mean that if I create any one of the business service model, or not business service, basically blueprint model, and I will make relation with one of the business service model, then I can see all the detailed graphical representation in TSOM as well. Yeah.
TSOM is different. BHOM is
Sorry,
consuming.
BHOM, pardon me with my word. Yeah. So TSOM is the older version. So definitely we understand that the monitoring will consume the data from the CMDB. So my only take is that, does the recent version has that level of capability to do? Because in the 24.1, I didn't see there is any kind of possibility which we can sync our blueprint in our CMDB, and that's why we cannot make it.
24.1, we released the new functionality, and if you look at the release notes on 24.1, you'll see there were two. There was the query, the visualized query, visual query builder, and then just below that, in the slightly quieter, is the CMDB Business Service Sync. And if you go into add a CMDB, if Sam, is it okay if I jump back into my demo?
Yeah, no, please do. That's what the Q&A is for. Go ahead.
Love it. So this only doesn't have an active CMDB sync. This is a local only. But if I add a new, and we're on 24.1, we have this new option down the bottom, Service Sync, which it will go to asset every 8 hours, and I can say, go and get these extra mappings. However, there's a limitation. The underlying applications, business application instances, have to have come from discovery in the first place. They go over via the CMDB sync. You create manual relationships to your business services, new business services, existing business services, it doesn't matter. And at that point, sometime in the next 8 hours, if I use that setting, those business services are pulled back into discovery. So create the applications in discovery, synchronize them over, let them go through recon into asset, create relationships between those discovery applications and your business service CIs, and they will come back, and you have this loop of data available to you. And then they are available to, so those business services are then available to Service Monitor for AIOps. BHOM can then map onto those business services. BHCO can then consume. By bringing those services back into discovery, you then make them available to the whole AIOps arena for ITOM.
Okay, so which means that we can definitely utilize this blueprint service modeling, and then we can interact with our BHOM monitoring capability. Yeah. And
I think this has this offering here is a fantastic opportunity when you think we have thousands of services, business services already created in the CMDB. We don't want to cross key them. That should sort it out. You can then control within reason. If you've got thousands of services, but maybe only 10 have any real infrastructure behind them, then you create your business applications with your infrastructure and your blueprints and everything, synchronize those over, relate those to the 10 business services that you're going to do anything with, and that will bring only back the 10 that you care about. So you can control which business services are re-imported into discovery for consumption.
That's nice. Yeah.
So I think that this with blueprints is a fantastic opportunity to work in a mature environment such as you all have, where you may have already created these services 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed, it's definitely a great help. Yeah, thanks for that, Matt. Yeah,
no problem.
Thank you for your questions. Yeah,
that's all right.
Sorry,
Sam, I only went so
Matt.
long because I well, one, I like to talk, but two, I think we may have covered off 2 or 3 of the other questions.
We did, but what I will do is just, I think Ahmed's quite active on a lot of our webinars. I don't know, Ahmed, if you just want to come off mute and just confirm if that kind of answers your questions as well, or if you have anything additional to add. Can you hear us?
I think Sam's, sorry, Ahmad might be working in the airport. The noise we heard earlier sounded very familiar.
I don't think that was Ahmed, actually. I think that was Sashi. Sometimes people put different profiles up, so we'll just check. So can you hear us, Ahmed? Maybe not. He normally comes off mute. Well, we'll give you the opportunity. If you can still hear us, I can still see you there. If we move on, we've got Lucas. I don't know if he's still on. Is it Lucas? Yeah,
It's
he may have
Lucas,
gone as well. So yes.
Well, I'll respond. I don't know. I'll find out.
Okay, so that was around the TKUs, wasn't it? And using new TPL. So
and Eric was asking something about patterns as well. Eric, yes, you can, is the short answer. Whether it works properly with the whole AI ops, there, I think we could start a conversation on the communities. But in short, the new way of creating services is not model.business service or model.business application. You actually create definitions and then trigger the creation from that. That can all be done in code.
Okay, thank you.
Not that I may have done it myself.
I was wondering, because we capture a lot of metadata information on things like microservice deployments and leverage that today for some mapping of services to, or microservices to applications. So it's just, I'm brand new to Blueprint, so just kind of starting to turn in my brain what we could do.
My train of thought would be, if you are grabbing more granular metadata, create the patterns to create the relationships, and then you are able to use Blueprints in its most raw form. I want to know that that thing is connected to that thing, but you've actually used the extended discovery patterns to create those relationships.
Right.
That would be one train of thought. That's pretty much what I've done. What I've done in the demo today, to create all these extra relationships that in a production environment just wouldn't exist. That's pretty much what I've done. Is dug down into pods and grabbed metrics out of those pods and used that to identify a relationship and enforce or create a relationship between something. What else have we got? Different levels of services. I'm going to demonstrate that no is the answer. If I want to deploy a service, I have let's just go back into here to the discovery blueprint and edit it. And it at no point on here says what type of service it is. When I go back to my services, and I'm going the longest way possible to click as many times as I can, so please forgive me if you know the shortcuts. If I want to deploy a blueprint, out of the box, it will offer you a business service. I'm going to say, no, I don't want a business service. I want it to be an application. We're going to add the content, and we're going to say, I want the BMC discovery instance. We're going to preview it as stuff. We're going to click save. If I click save and close, it will create a business application. We've just changed our mind. Oh no, we want a technical service. If I click save and close, we've just created a technical service with a silly name, but it's the same content. The blueprint defines the rules. It doesn't define what level of service you're going to be creating. Hopefully to Anonymous, that's clicked, sorted you out. Ahmed, I'll go with your first question. No, it's free. It's out the box. It comes with the platform. I think 23.3 is when Blueprints was available in Discovery. Formal training. I'm not 100% if there's any.
Replying back to that, Robert, I don't know if it's that you're looking for something specific to Blueprints, or are you talking across Discovery? Because I work very closely with the education team, and I've already got the mapping for this session, but I will need to go and have a look if they specifically cover what you need. So if you can come off mute if you're there and just confirm what type of training, and if there is any other customers on here that are looking for training as well. I don't know if you can hear us, Robert.
And Robert, I would also say, once you've had some training and got comfortable, I would very much suggest that the communities can be ridiculously helpful in when you want to do something as well. So the two parts definitely work in cohesion.
I've followed up, Matt, with Robert. I don't know, sometimes people can't come off of mute. I know Ahmed is in a very noisy area. So Robert, if you're happy for me to go and have a look for you, I'll share it with the thank you email. There'll be some recommended training. We try to map them to each of the webinar sessions that we do. But if there's anything additional you're looking for, something very specific, then I'll go and speak to education on our behalf. So let us know. Okay, so Matt, back to the questions. We've got one from Andreas. Can you see that?
I was going to go top down, if that's all right. Yeah, sort of.
Go for it.
So it's not that the application is created from Blueprint, it's that the application is created by Discovery. So that could be a traditional TPL or CAM business application instance. It could be a SAM business application instance, or it could have come from Blueprint. So as long as it creates a business application instance in Discovery, which synchronizes to BMC application in the CMDB, and it's come from Discovery, that's the dependency to bring the services back. Next question, if you change Tipple to customize things, it can be, Peter, but I would suggest looking at things like overrides. So override patterns, if you set the pattern version high enough, 99, when you import the next TKU, it's a lower version. And so quite often those overrides will survive a TKU update. Why are candidates important for monitoring? Because a candidate software is based on a running process. And if that running process is on a internal built application that may be built by your DevOps people, not outside of your business, so it's never going to be in the TKU, and you haven't converted it to a pattern as yet, you can still monitor that running process in AIOps. So that's where candidate software has a life of its own, if you like, in the AIOps space. But it's an awareness that if you use a candidate software in your services, then that data is not mapped into the CMDB.
I think that's all the questions, Matt. I don't know if everyone that's asked those questions, if you do want to come off mute and ask anything additional, feel free, because I know, Matt, you're on a roll with answering all of them, which is great. We will, by the way, formalise the questions and answers onto a blog post. We will take those from today and formulate those and put them onto the community page. We'll also be sharing out the recordings as well. I know there was a few people that had asked if all the content's going to be available, and the answer is yes. We try to make it as available as possible, and again, that gets promoted and put onto BMC communities. Just going back to the questions, normally when I say we're about to wrap, we get a few more questions. So Matt, going back to the Q&A.
Import dependencies. Jan, I'm going to assume that you're talking to something like intelligent integrations. I don't know if it's on the list. It's not my area of expertise, but I can certainly find out and will let you know. For anyone that is not aware, intelligent integrations is another component of Helix. It talks directly to your other management software, for want of a better word, so SolarWinds or Dynatrace, and it consumes topology records and fires those into Discovery to allow you to model stuff. I don't know if Instana is a supported technology at the moment. I will find out and let you know. Cigar, I'm not sure if that's the Cigar I know. Hello, if you are. Do we have further detailed sessions on blueprints and AIOps? Yes. I know that Sam is got lots of tracks at the moment for AIOps, and
you guessed it right, Matt. I'm the same.
Hello, mate. So absolutely, blueprinting is something I've done a bit of a deep dive on here. The out-of-the-box blueprints deliver very much for AIOps, and the later sessions, I would hope that we can do a bit of a tag team between myself and some of the AIOps people to do a handoff of, there's the models, don't they look pretty? And here they are in the AIOps space. And then put those Christmas tree lights onto the Christmas tree.
And that's definitely something that we're going to be sharing on that point. There is a webinar page that I do share with my thank you emails. We're doing an AIOps series once a month. The next one is going to be tomorrow. We started this on March the 20th. It's with Matt's colleague, Yaron Front. We start really with the foundations and the fundamentals of what actually is AIOps. If you did miss that last recording, if you sign up to the series, you can either sign up to them all, or you can also click on the ones that have been past events and get the on-demand recording. And then the plan is, as Matt's just pointed out, we're going to start bringing the BMC technology together. So I have in the past done quite a lot of independent webinars with a lot of our product managers that cover the AIOps area. But we're now going to start looking at those integrations and intelligent automation, intelligent integration, how it fits in with discovery, capacity optimization, Helix operation management. All of those are going to become part of the pieces, including customer stories and also some guest speakers. So I would definitely invite you, going back to the community conversation, to have a look at that webinar page. If you have any questions, do let me know, because I tend to co-host or set up and do all the moderating. So if there are, again, any other topics outside of just discovery, we're trying to get more FaceTime with product managers and customers and partners. And then there's also going to be some enablement sessions included as well. So yeah, interested to hear it, and hopefully, Saga, that'll answer your question. The AIOps series has already started, and then the plan with the discovery team is to try and look at building a series in and also including them into a guest speaker slot to talk about the discovery element of AIOps as well.